Tom, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for making a few minutes to visit with me today.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Tom, I've known of you for a very, very long time. I got to know you a little bit several years ago when we had an opportunity to sit down. I think you were just recently outside of Procter and Gamble, but you've done a lot in the years since. Most notably, and most recently, of course, is writing a brand new book called Collaborative Disruption that really tells the story about how Walmart and Procter and Gamble worked together to really transform the way that the supplier teams would interact with Walmart, and I think that that's been carried on, across other places. But introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your professional journey at Procter and Gamble without sort of getting too much into the weeds about your relationship with Mr. Sam. We'll get there, but just give us a little bit of your backstory, if you would, please.
I'm 35 years with P&G, and I started out in sales and then have had a variety of assignments in all of the different product divisions, in sales, marketing, and then general management. I worked in the US, Brussels, Scotland, England. And then with the role of helping the company figure out how to go to market in the year 2000, which then morphed into the P&G-Walmart team. And then I was the team leader for the first 15 years.
Yeah. And when you joined the P&G team in Northwest Arkansas with responsibility for the Walmart business, what did winning with Walmart mean to P&G then?
Well, we were totally misaligned
Mm.
as the two companies, and so winning was how do we get on the same page uh, and do it in a way that seems to be a win-win for both companies because both companies had agendas, but the agendas weren't necessarily the same in terms of how to get there.
Mhm. And those were still in the days really where CPG companies, especially great big CPG companies, had an awful lot of power in
Yeah.
the relationship with retailers. And for Mr. Sam didn't really flex his muscles, but he was really all about, we ought to be able to do things differently. Tell that story. Talk about where things were, and talk about sort of the first conversations that led to this great big breakthrough.
Well, it started with inside of P&G internally. We were a very successful company, had been doing things the same way for 30 years. And we had a new senior vice president of sales who came in and said, hey, the retail market is starting, it's morphing. You got super centers, club stores, discounters, and we've been doing things successfully. But what about technology? What should we be doing differently or getting ready to do differently? And so he asked me to chair a multifunctional team, and we looked at everything within the company. We benchmarked what we thought we did well, where we had gaps. We studied competitors. We studied other industries. We brought in industry experts to say, okay, where do you see supply chain going and whatever? And we put together this recommendation, which wasn't very well received at P&G because things were working. So the people that were leading the company said, thank you for playing. We'll put this off to the side in case we ever need it. Well, meanwhile, Sam was very frustrated with P&G and with all his suppliers, actually, because he was growing, but he had this different concept of everyday low price. And suppliers, as you mentioned, we had a lot of the dictating the lines on the playing field, and the rest of the market was high-low. So what he was asking for was really cutting across the way we were doing our business, and it seemed like a threat to us at the time. But Sam, well, he actually made a comment that turned out to be the mantra of the relationship. He said, if you thought of my stores as an extension of your company, we would be doing business totally differently together. And so we ended up, he actually called our CEO on the phone trying to give him the Vendor of the Year award. He'd said to his suppliers, his buyers, has anybody had anything that's worked with P&G? Well, he called our CEO's assistant, wouldn't put him through because our CEO didn't talk with customers and she didn't know who Sam Walton was. So he got even further frustrated and gave the award to somebody else. Well, then this same individual who put me in charge of the of how to go to market in the year 2000. It turns out he was an Eagle Scout at the same time Sam was.
Oh,
And
wow.
so somehow they got together and on that famous canoe trip. But P&G was pretty arrogant. So if there was a good idea, we would tell we would tell the retailer what it was. So as part of that, this individual, Lou Pritchett, invited Sam and his leadership team to come to Cincinnati and go through our total quality training, which we had, those were in the days of Dr. Deming and total quality. And of course, that was very anti the way Walmart spending 3 days in a meeting just was not the norm. Uh,
Yeah.
but they did that. And at the end of the meeting, Sam stood up and said to our CEO, John, let's do it. John said, let's do what? He said, well, let's do this total quality thing between our two companies. Well, we were like a deer in the headlights because we didn't run the business from the top down. And the CEO, after having them there for 3 days, uh, there's a lot of corporate ego on the line. We can't just say no or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he said, what are we going to do? And someone said, well, we have this recommendation from Muccio's team. It probably won't work, but we can get credit for trying something new. So let's go ahead and commit to that. And that's how we ended up having a chance to be able to work together differently.
Yeah. And talk about what that was. I mean, we know it now sort of as reverse bow tie, but talk about the system, the mindset change that was engineered on your team.
Okay. Well, essentially, when we studied the relationship, it was buyer and seller only, and all the resources of both companies never got involved. Or if they did get involved, it was the buyer or the salesperson who were the one that translated, and they were the least too qualified to describe something for the total system. So our idea was, let's go to market multifunctionally, which is the way companies run their business internally, so that we could have finance talk to finance, logistics to logistics, and so on and so forth. And so we got together and we said to them, let's create a mirror team. And so it was a mirror function or mirror image of the other functions. And then that group became the leadership group, or we considered ourselves to be the board of directors for the relationship. And we were able to build relationships function to function and then look at the total system as well. We co-designed together a method of interacting, and we came up with common strategy or common objectives, common strategy, because they had to play within both companies. So, for instance, both companies wanted to increase sale. Both wanted to improve their profit margin. They wanted to, we wanted to increase our market share. We wanted to reduce cost. And we both wanted to serve the same consumer or shopper. Walmart called them the shopper. We call them called her the consumer. And sometimes the shopper doesn't consume the product, but in essence, there was a lot of similarity between those two. And so that was a bedrock principle that helped it to make it work within both companies, because both wanted to do a better job with the person that we were the customer or the consumer. And so that's how we started. We reversed that blow tie, and then we just started, uh, we would flow chart systems and say, well, wait a minute, you're doing this and I'm doing that 2 steps later. Maybe one of us doesn't need to do that. Or wait a minute, you do this better than we do. Why are we doing it? And so it was that kind of a situation. I call it peeling the onion. We started with this, and every time we peeled off a layer of the onion, we saw something else that was even a bigger prize than what we thought when we started the conversation.
Yeah. You alluded to this before, but obviously the organization's cultures couldn't have been any more different. And so what 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 were some of the early successes and maybe even the early failures as you were sort of walking down this path, and talk a little bit about the role of trust and transparency and finding that breakthrough.
Well, yeah, that's a great question and a great perspective, because what we immediately understood is we didn't understand each other very well. So the first time anybody came on our team, they worked in a Walmart store for a week, and everything from night receiving to the front end of the store. They spent a day in a warehouse. And reverse that, we brought Walmart folks to Cincinnati to understand the difference between just price and value. Well, they believed in good, better, best. The three different tiers of products. They didn't really understand the difference between them and how you got there from a consumer products company. And so the first thing we had to do is understand each other better, and then we had to start understanding and being open to saying, well, why do you do this the way you do it? And then the reverse uh, and and we came up with two principles. Let's talk about issues, not positions or policies, and let's look to do what's right, not prove who was right. And so the solutions were not the Walmart way or the P&G way, but typically both of us did some things better, and by combining those, uh, and the culture as well. I mean, P&G was much more hierarchical. Walmart was much flatter culture, uh, and so we had to take that into consideration as we were working together. They weren't into entitlement or titles and that kind of stuff, uh, and they were ready, fire, aim, and P&G was ready, aim some more, change the scope, aim again. And while there's an advantage for getting closer to the target, you'll get more bullseyes. There's also an advantage to speed. So what we did is we really complemented each other and helped each other grow in those areas. They helped us go faster, and we helped them to be more analytical before they pulled the trigger. So and again, the other thing that we had to deal with was reality. That once I would peel away the corporate ego and the silos and whatever to really identify what the issue was, we had lots of options of how to go about trying to fix that and make it better. And so I talk about one of the big problems corporations have is corporate fog. And what I mean by that is the senior people in the company, they don't understand what it's really like to be a customer or supplier of their company. In fact, I even joke and say, if people had to be a customer of themselves, one of their objectives may be to switch suppliers. Uh, and then you've got the people in the middle of the organization who are waving their hands saying, do you realize the pain that and do you realize the opportunities we're missing? But this fog prevents that from being seen. So people say to me, well, how do you get rid of fog? And I said, well, how does nature get rid of fog? The sun shines, brings light on the situation, and then all of a sudden you can see. So from a corporate point of view, that's about defining reality. What is truth? What really is happening? What are the consequences? Uh, we would do things because we knew that this was good for us, but we didn't really care what that did to the Walmart system and vice versa. And so once we could understand that, um, and with the desire to say, we want to try to see if we can get a win-win or at least a win neutral in everything that we're doing. And we went for early wins. And as we did those early wins, that built the confidence of our mirror team and confidence within both companies to give us uh, more rope and try more things. At Walmart, when we started, they didn't believe it would work because they didn't believe P&G would ever change. P&G didn't think it was going to work, and because in many respects, people didn't want it to work because it was a threat to the way we were doing business and a challenging to decision making and authority. And we had 7 or 8 different product divisions, all with invoices that said P&G, but the terms were different. So we really had kind of 8 faces to Walmart. And in fact, one of my colleagues joked and said P&G could be a Mercedes, but we decided to keep it as 8 bicycles. Uh, and it was important while doing some things, combining to make it easier for the customer. We didn't want to lose the focus and the information we had in each of those product categories.
Yeah.
So again, we kept finding over and over again, we were looking for and solutions, not either ors.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Was there a big breakthrough moment? And how long did it take to get there? And then what did the future look like once everyone sort of saw, wow, we can do great big things working this way together?
Well, it came about in two stages. When our team came down, we spent a day with each function, all kind of levels within a function. Uh, and then we would go away to Bella Vista at night with flip charts and say, what did we hear? Because we were listening multifunctionally for the first
Yeah.
time. Because I knew what I knew, but I didn't know anything about these other functions in terms of that kind of depth. Well, when we spent a day with the finance department and we were debriefing, and our finance manager said, uh, do you know their stores are profit centers? So I wrote that on the flip chart. 5 minutes later, she said, their stores are profit centers. I said, Kathy, I've got it. See it right there on the chart. 10 minutes later, she said, their stores are profit centers. I said, I'm starting to get cranky. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to explain. And she said, well, their stores are profit centers. We pay the allowances bill back. And so if we have a $2 allowance, but our competitor has a $1 allowance, but does it off invoice, that product looks better to the stores because it's their margin and
Yeah.
that will get different merchandising and whatever. So when that light went on, we said, whoa, that's an epiphany.
Yeah.
So and then the second thing was Walmart said, would you at least try and with us on net down pricing, which was their idea of a flat price all year long. So when we did net down pricing on a couple of brands to test it, and we did off invoice, that just opened up an amazing ability. First of all, it reinforced to Walmart that we were serious, and we had some rope to be able to try some things differently. They then our concern is if we give them all the money up front, we won't get the merchandising. And Sam said, no, we merchandise your brands because they're good brands. They sell. We're not merchandising because you're giving us money. It's because customers want to buy them and they shouldn't have to wait for a sale to be able to do that. So it became a ham and egg kind of deal. The more we tried things like that and did the right thing, and that's where you're right about trust. When we started out, there was not trust between the two companies or between the people in the mirror team.
Right.
We trusted people's intent to be trustworthy, but like Reagan said, trust and verify it. So we had to do that, and we measured everything that was important to either company. That's one of the smart things we did. If they measured it, we wanted to measure it, and what was our impact on that, and vice versa. So it was, and we had some, it was not a popular concept, the fact that we were doing this net down pricing. Uh, Basically, we had the lawyers running the relationship. They had to jump
Mm.
through hoops to get the money, and on their side, they wanted the money with nothing. And so we had to come up with some kind of memos of intent or at least discussions of intent. Here's what this means to us. Here's what this, and okay, let's take the chance of doing something totally different and believe that we will get better results and make our fears go away.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a two-part question. I think these are related questions. Was there a no turning back moment where the organization realized that there's just no better way to be doing business, and we just got to commit to this and continue to work out the rough edges? And then the second part of the question is, at what point did the mindset shift begin to permeate within some of the other teams within Walmart's supplier community? Because by the time I got to the office in the late 90s, this whole multifunctional approach to running teams was common practice. So was there that no turning back moment? And then at what point did you begin to see these practices begin to permeate some of the other larger CPG companies?
Well, I think that the idea caught on much faster at Walmart when they saw that P&G was willing to change, but there
Mm,
was still an enormous resistance within P&G
mm,
in the 8 product divisions. And we had a year one, we had to, we did this for a year, and then we had to go back and we had to meet with each of the product divisions, all of their leadership and whatever. And they just, I mean, they were picking everything they could, even though the results were fabulous in everything. They still thought that was a threat. And when we were at one of the last meetings, our CEO walked into the room and he saw us getting pillaged by the audience. And after 10 minutes, he stood up and he said, I think you would be more productive to focus the balance in this meeting on how to make this work better, because we are going to do that. He just said, we unilaterally, we are not, this is not a test anymore. This is the way we're going to go to market. And then once that happened, I was then charged with how do we then take this to other retailers as well, so that it's not, because other people were saying you're giving Walmart favorable treatment
mm.
and whatever. And we said, no, we're testing a concept. Uh,
Yeah.
and what I couldn't do anything internally in those other customers, but I could help P&G come up with team leaders and the right principles. And I would meet with the senior executives I'd met with Target, Costco, uh, and what I said to them was, listen, this is not something we do to you. This is something we do together. And if you
Yeah.
want us to work on this way with you and put resources against it, here are the things you need to put skin in the game to make it happen. And
Yeah.
so some retailers said yes, some retailers said no, and that's how it evolved over time. And I continued for the 15 years to be kind of the godfather for team leaders and the one that would take on the power brokers in Cincinnati. Uh, I laughed that, I started this job. I was 6'6" with dark black hair and dark brown hair, and now I'm 5'11" with gray hair.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyhow, that's just the way it works in corporations. And most of the time, in my consulting career, it's not the customer that's the problem. It's the internal alignment in companies, and giving them the right resources, the right recognition and reward, the right tools, the right flexibility to be able to make something happen in a better way.
Yeah. So in terms of this mindset change catching on, was it something where other team leads came to you and said, "Hey, tell me more about this," or was it really more a mandate from Walmart recognizing that this works so much better, and now you're going to do it, and you're going to do it, and you're going to do it?
No, Walmart was really, they were very, people came to them and said, does this mean we need to put people in Northwest Arkansas? Walmart said,
Mm,
you locate your people wherever you want to locate. Uh, we're not mandating anything. But
mm,
what happened is we had, first there were bigger competitors, like Kimberly Clark and whatever. And they saw what we were doing and they were losing market share and watching us
yeah,
grow. And they said, we need to do something different. And so they tried to pattern what they did after what we were doing, uh, and uh, and that just continued to catch on. And when more and more teams were formed down here, what Walmart and P&G were able to do, we were able to create a lot of industry standards, which made it easier for people to plug in. And then what they would bring is differentiation on their products and whatever, and how they could be better by supply chain and all of the various elements. But a lot of things didn't have to get reinvented because we came up with, EDI and Retail Link and CHEP pallets and, a whole bunch of things like that, which are now that's just the way business is done. Uh, but, as an example, P&G, we harmonized all the 8 divisions trade terms so that we had one set. But in order to operate on that, you had to do electronic funds transferred, good funds in bank at the end. No longer the check is in the mail or that. And Walmart then had to give us the ability to work directly with their warehouses to set appointments. So we didn't have because we were getting trucks put in a drop lot, and then we would have to pay demurrage on the trailers while they were. And so we took a lot of those pain points, frustration, and places where people could complain. We removed those by doing the right thing in the right way.
Obviously, the game has changed a lot in the time that you and I have both been outside of our respective organizations, and
Right.
in a lot of ways, things are the same, right? It's data driven, collaborative decision making. I think speed has increased. I think uh, you know the resources that are sort of being thrown at bigger problems. Walmart has had one heck of a run. What does winning with Walmart look like today to you? And how is that different than maybe what it would have been when you were leading the P&G team?
Well, I think for the most part, it is really the same. The principles are all reapplicable. We just have different tools today than we did, but we always have to keep the customer in the mind and in the middle. What does that customer want to buy in terms of products, and how do they want to shop to get that? And now you got delivery options, you got omni-channel, you got all of that, but all of those are just variations. And if you still put the same principles on the line, what are we trying to solve? How do we do that in a way that advances both companies? And again, I really believe that the bigger companies will will help with the smaller companies by creating industry standards so that that it's easy for them to buy into it. And then you see Walmart doing some very smart things, like their program with the Start brands, where they're going out and looking for concepts and ideas and brands that are in their infancy, and they're saying, well, wait a minute, why do I need to wait until they're, maybe I can help to build them and I'll get an advantage uh, of being a first mover or understanding. I think that's very, very smart that Walmart is doing that. And that's then forcing the consumer product companies to keep their eyes on technologies that are changing, because some of these smaller companies can be a lot more nimble and a lot faster. And so you're maybe big, but if you're not nimble as well as being big, uh, you know, uh, if the objective is to climb a tree, hire a squirrel, don't try to train a horse. Uh,
Yeah.
and um, so that's what I would consider to be, and it's the same measurements. Companies measure themselves the same way: sales, profit, uh, innovation, speed of innovation, all of those the exact same measurements. And the way I describe it is the mile time in the Olympics this year was a lot faster than it was in 1990, but the distance is the same. And if and and so in 1990, when we ran the mile together, we had gold medal time. But those times,
Yeah.
in terms of speed and resources and access, uh, wouldn't win the mile today.
Yeah.
You need to be keeping up with the times and the tools.
Yeah. I want to spend just a few minutes, maybe more than a few minutes, talking about the book that you've written. A lot of folks that have been sort of part of this Walmart ecosystem have written books about their experience working with, for, or because of Walmart. And to be honest with you, there's been a lot of books written, but not very many of them are really much good. If I'm honest, you had a lot of people after you for years to tell this story, not so much so a celebration of Tom Muccio and Team Procter and Gamble, but more because what the story is so relevant today. The book was published just in the last month. It's been very successful so far. In fact, Doug McMillan just picked it. I hope this is public, as one of his top ten
Yeah,
reads
on
for
his LinkedIn.
2024.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of his top 10 reads for 2024. So talk a little bit about the book, and why you decided now was the time to do it, and so sort of what you've learned through the process of the retelling of this story.
Well, first of all, uh, it when I retired from P&G to do other things in 2003, people were trying to, you need to write the story, you need to write the story.
Yeah.
And I got I just didn't have the time or the resources to, and so I had several false starts where I made outlines and maybe wrote one story or another. And then one of our CEOs, John Pepper, who actually did the forward of the book at P&G, uh, and he and Don Soderquist had been putting pressure. You got to tell the story, and their message was, uh, this is a key piece of both companies' success. You can't take where we are today from where we were without putting that piece in place. And so it became, I owed it to the pioneers that did this to be able to tell our story and how it happened, the resistance, some of the key leaders in both companies that made a huge difference in allowing us to do the work and do it in a different way. And when I finally, uh, uh, a handful of people that worked on the team said, we're going to drag you across the finish line. And so I got a lot of coaching and a lot of pushing and prodding to put it together. And I had 5 audiences in mind as I was writing it. First audience was the senior executive, the C-suite of companies, to help them understand what they're leaving on the table by not collaborating with customers or suppliers, or not doing it the right way in a way that's going to allow it to grow. Then secondly, I wanted to have something for team leaders today that would be some ideas, some principles, some techniques and things that could help them do a better job. Because I'm a big believer in the culture. If you don't have the right culture on your team, you're not going to be able to get where you want to go. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I wanted to have things in there for aspiring leaders, people that were wanting to come up through the system. I wanted to have things that they could do differently or things they could learn that would help them in their career advancement. Then I wanted to have it for people who are business historians, because many people have said this is to retailing what the assembly line was to building automobiles. Uh,
Yeah.
and then my last desire, I wanted it to be a good read, a fun read, so that if someone picked it up in an airport or whatever, and they read it, they would say, "This was an enjoyable. I learned some things, but this was an enjoyable story. It was well
Yeah.
told." Uh, and so that was my 5 objectives. And what I learned going through it again was just reinforcing, first of all, a lot of great memories came back, and
Sure.
reinforcing the fact that when you're a team, the leader is only one piece. Because I
Mhm.
saw so many things that went on uh, from team members in both companies, and we were. I described myself in the book was I came down. They gave me a baton and a platform to stand on, and I couldn't read music and never played an instrument. But when I held that baton up, all these musicians started playing incredible music, and I just got to be the first one to applaud. Uh, and we learned a lot from Walmart's culture as well,
Mm.
because their leadership was very, very focused. Everything that they did, from language to how they did things, reinforced what their vision and what they were trying to drive to get done. And and so when we built our building here, we made all our offices the same size, and the only reserved parking place were for the Walmart folks when they came and so I said to people, "You want a reserved parking place? Get there early." Uh,
Yeah.
and we made uh, we really did buy into the teamwork. There's no I in team, and that we, just like your body, it's got a lot of parts that don't get much visibility. Whereas the leadership, I comb my hair and do all of those things. Uh, so we wanted to make sure that everyone who had, I mean, in our body, I'm sure glad all those parts I can't see work well. Uh,
Sure.
and we wanted to make that true in both companies as well. So we went out of our way to identify and then recognize and thank those people who did that. I call that servant leadership, where the objective of the leadership is to remove the barriers and help those people doing the work actually do it better, and then recognize them and ensure that it's a benefit to them, either in salary or promotion or just general recognition and feeling good about their contribution.
Yeah. I thought it was quite telling that among Doug McMillan's top 10 books for the year were yours, of course, but also a rereading of Mr. Sam's
Yes,
book. And so, as much as things have changed, and as much as new technology and all these different things, we all sort of stand on the shoulders of giants who've gone before us to lay down
absolutely.
really solid foundations and business practices that can be accelerated, et cetera. But really, really exciting times. Um, Tom, I'll give you sort of the last word on this, but obviously, again, a lot has changed since you and I have been in the game, if you will, leading teams. But a lot of things are still very much the same. If you were sitting down for coffee with a brand new team leader, whether it's a small team or a large team, what would be sort of the first things that come to mind as you have that conversation with her or him?
Well, first of all, I would say to them, uh, collaboration is about mutual interest. People don't want to collaborate if there's no benefit for them, and so you're going to have your organization has to be aligned with a vision, and uh, a- and and then you're going to have value that you bring to Walmart, and in order to do that, you need alignment within your company, because the last thing you want to be is someone who has to ask at home every day, can I do this? Can I do that? You got to have some flexibility built in, and you have to have a team that knows how to execute. There's a great, in my mind, blend of continuity with bringing in new talent. I'm a big believer in continuity in the leadership,
Yeah.
because that, one, you're a known quantity, and two, the more you're experienced, the more you can take a risk, the more you can. And I would also say to them, figure out a way to test any idea, uh,
Yeah.
because if you test things, you're de-risking them. Number one, and number two, the most important thing about a test is putting down the success criteria. So I could say to Walmart, for this to be successful, what does this have to prove to you? And for P&G, what does this have to prove to you? Because otherwise you can fall in love with your own ideas, or once you're successful on those bases, if you don't have them written down, people just say, oh yeah, well, that was sick, but you didn't do this and you didn't. And so it can go, you can never clear the hurdles because they keep moving the finish line. So those would be some of the things that I would, uh, and be willing to develop, and understand really reality, and be willing to challenge internally and with Walmart. There were many things where, there were uncomfortable conversations, but we kept going back to saying, remember, we were going to do issues, not positions, and what's right rather than prove who's right. So it is a process, and you get your rhythm and develop as you go there. But we're servicing the same shopper consumer, and it's not that hard. It's not rocket science. It's doing the right thing the right way, and being a realist as you do it, and making sure that everybody can win on the team in both companies.
Yeah. Tom, it is always such an honor and a privilege for me to spend time with you, for you to have led a team that contributed in such significant ways to the entire industry, certainly to this Walmart ecosystem that we're a part of. Folks can pick up your books in a whole lot of places. I know you're doing some advising and some speaking, and we'll make sure people can find your contact information within the description. But thank you so much for making time for this conversation. Congratulations to you and to the team you put together to launch this book. And I wish you well. Look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you very much. It's an honor, and I pray blessings on your conference. I'm looking forward to being involved and listening and getting the ideas that others are going to be sharing as well. And yes, I'm happy to meet with teams or their leadership or their senior management, because I really believe this is a better way of doing business. And it's very relevant today as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So long.